The Honourable, resuming debate, the Honourable Member for Vancouver East.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I'm very pleased to participate in this debate this evening. I think it's a very important debate. You know, in the rough and tumble of the life of Parliament, we can argue and disagree and have votes where we disagree, but every once in a while I think we have an issue that comes forward. And sometimes it is through a take-note debate when we're not going to have a vote, but at least we're able to express the concerns and the issues that we have around a particular issue. So this issue tonight of organ donation in Canada is a very important issue, and I know it's an issue that's deeply personal for the more than 4,000 Canadians who are waiting for an organ transplant to save their lives. Last year, only 1,803 transplants were performed, and so of course there's many patients who are on the waiting list still. And unfortunately, the reality is that over 200 Canadians died last year while waiting for an organ transplant. And we do know that the highest volume or the greatest need is for kidney transplant. 75% of the patients are on the list waiting for a kidney transplant. And I know that, you know, we're all touched by this issue in various ways, and certainly in thinking about Gary Keller and his family and what he's been through, and certainly our hearts go out to him and the struggle that he's going through with this issue health-wise, but also looking for a potential donor. This is a very critical thing. So these human stories, I know they're very difficult to share and to talk about, but they do help us understand what it is that we need to do as members of Parliament, as policymakers, as legislatures. So I do want to thank Mr. Keller for speaking out and helping inform this debate and to bringing a sense of urgency about what it is that needs to be done. You know, over the last couple of days, because we only heard recently about the take-note debate, I contacted a couple of people that I know who are very involved in this issue. Someone who is involved, who does undergo kidney dialysis. And I also spoke to, via email, I didn't speak to them, via email I had a good communication with someone who is very involved in a provincial program in terms of managing, in this case it's the liver transplant program. And I would just like to make a couple comments about what these folks told me, because to me it's, you know, it's one thing for me to talk about what's in a report and to say this, but when you hear it from people who are directly involved, it's ever so much more meaningful. And so from the person who is someone who has been on kidney dialysis for a long time, I believe, what this person wrote to me just today, quote, they want to encourage all willing donors to sign their licenses, yes, but also to go online to register. If someone is in a hospital dying, which is usually the case, the donor info pops up there on the screen so the doctor can see that you're registered. If a family member is not right there or does not know, organs are then wasted. And this person goes on to say, why cannot a national registry be created, maintained with this data, so that if someone does need a kidney suddenly, which is almost always the case, that the list of potential donors can be quickly connected and the appropriate action taken. So this is someone who's undergoing this in their daily life, and I think the words here are well taken, and we have to understand what's behind this and how we need to do more. The second email that I received, and again this is from someone who is very involved in the system and is working with people who need transplants, and what they had to say is, quote, every day people die, and almost as hard, people who are unable to be productive, contributing citizens while they wait, who are too ill to work and contribute. This applies to dialysis patients as well as in many cases. They exist but can't work at the same level as they would normally, if at all. And then the person goes on to make the point, it brings great comfort to the family of the deceased person to think that they may have made a difference in saving a life. Organ donation is the ultimate recycling. And then they say, it seems odd to me that Canada, with its reputation of helping others, has one of the poorest organ donation rates in the modern world. We need to find a way to engage our people in organ donation, including the people who have come here from elsewhere, using language, culture, and reaching out to all. So that was an email from someone who works in the system coordinating the list in a province. And I also noted that the Canadian Blood Services have said to us that Canada is one of the only countries in the Western world without a national coordinated system for organ and tissue donation and transplantation. The system as it stands today is at capacity and is struggling to cope with current needs and projected future demands. So, Madam Speaker, that's from the Canadian Blood Services. And so I kind of return to where I started, which is the issue of public policy. And I do feel that we have a responsibility as parliamentarians to ensure that our government is actually following through on recommendations that have been made. And the fact is that the Canadian Council for Donation and Transplantation was set up in 2001. And I have no doubt that this body, which acts as an advisory body to the Conference of Deputy Ministers of Health, has done good work. I mean, I'm not disputing that. But I do feel that we haven't made the kind of progress that we need to see on an overall pan-Canadian strategy. And the fact is that in some provinces, there are very good systems. I was just speaking with one of my colleagues from Quebec who tells me that in Quebec there is a very well-organized system and there's good public awareness, and I hope we will hear from the member a little bit later in the evening and he can share some of the experiences of what he knows to be happening in Quebec. But the fact is, like with many issues, it's uneven across the country. And so this report was done in 1999 by the Health Committee to draw attention to the gaps, to the inadequacies, to the lack of an overall policy. And so it is rather disturbing and worrying that now here we are so many years later and not an awful lot of progress has been made. And not only on the system, and I think, you know, those are very important questions, and we're debating some of these issues, you know, as we look at the health accord that was signed in 2004, and as we approach the new health accord in 2014. And a lot of the questions that Canadians, advocates, the medical community, the health community are raising is the question of accountability, is the question of follow-through, of the question of knowing that we have procedures and programs in place to actually ensure Canadians that the systems are working at the best they can be, whether it's for organ transplants or whether it's for any other medical procedure. And so, Madam Speaker, I do have concerns that on this issue we're not doing everything that we can do, even on the level of public awareness. I mean, obviously, you know, we have to encourage people to come forward and to sign up either online. There are various ways to do it, again, depending on where you live. And there has to be a public awareness campaign. But as I remarked earlier to the parliamentary secretary, according to this report I read just from 2009, there basically hasn't been an overall campaign. I mean a big public awareness campaign in terms of multimedia since 2002. So, you know, this is a very critical factor, because unless we can make people aware, and particularly in multicultural communities where people may not be very familiar or may not be comfortable with discussing this issue, it surely is incumbent upon us to make sure that this information is out there in culturally appropriate ways in different languages, in local communities, as well as a national campaign to make it clear and to encourage people to sign up in terms of either as a donor while they are living and to think about that, or also as a donor when they may be deceased. And sometimes these aren't pleasant things to talk about, but you know what? It's part of life. It's part of our life process, and it's a conversation that we should open up. And so maybe we can begin that, Madam Speaker, as members of Parliament and help open this up. And so I do implore the government to look at this report from 1999 and to think about that this is a job not yet finished. This is a job not yet done in terms of a very important issue. And I want to end by expressing admiration to the 4,000 Canadians who are waiting for an organ transplant and recognizing the struggles and the hardship and the difficulty they go through, some of whom are not able to work, some of whom are in pain, some of whom are probably everybody who's just got a sense of anxiety. And so we want to say to them tonight that we hear this and we need to act and follow through. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Questions et commentaires? The Honourable Member for Kildonan St. Paul.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I do want to thank the member opposite for her comments tonight. As you can see, quite honestly, Madam Speaker, the concern that the member does have for kidney disease transplants and many other transplants, different organs, as well as stem cell transplants. I know that clearly the issue of kidney disease is something that a lot of people are dealing with, as well as other organ transplant issues. I know myself, when I put on a big event here in Parliament on October 6, 2010, and we were talking about then the One Swab, One Match, One Life, which was a stem cell donation that is needed for cancer patients. And I know clearly our government contributes to the prevention of kidney disease through the Canadian Diabetes Society, the Aboriginal Diabetes Initiative, and the Integrated Strategy on Healthy Living and Chronic Disease. And chronic disease is something we're studying right now on our Health Committee. I know my heart goes out to Mr. Keller because I can see the trauma that families go through. Now, what my question is to the member, what specifically and personally has she done or intend to do to make this aware? Because each Canadian, it's more than government, it's bigger than government. Each Canadian has to contribute in a very meaningful way. So can she please tell the House some ideas she has to personally contribute to this awareness program for the need for kidneys?
The Honourable Member for Vancouver East.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'm certainly happy to do that. And obviously the first thing we're doing is having this discussion and debate tonight, and that's a very important element. But, you know, we represent 308 ridings across the country, from the north to the south, from large urban ridings like my riding of Vancouver East to vast rural areas. And I think one thing that we could all do, and certainly I will commit to do, is to get out more information locally. We have a great opportunity and actually enormous privileges to communicate with our constituents. So maybe that's one thing that we can all say that we'll do tonight, is just on a kind of individual member of Parliament level, that we will get out some information to our community. And in my case, because my community is very diverse and there are many languages, I would try to do that in a multilingual way. But having said that, Madam Speaker, and I appreciate the question, I do feel we have to go beyond that. This is a big issue. It affects thousands of people. And so it is very important that we give some feedback here to the government, and to say, you know what, more has got to be done at a national level in terms of public awareness, in terms of a coordinated system across the country, as I tried to describe in my remarks. And I'm not an expert on this, but, you know, we understand public policy and we understand that you have to put a system in place that works. You know, we have very sophisticated technology these days. It's not rocket science. It's something that can be done. So anyway, there's a few suggestions and maybe more will come up during the evening.
Questions et commentaires. L'honorable député de Longueuil, Pierre Boucher.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Comme on est en conseil plénier, je croyais pertinent de partager avec tous ici une magnifique expérience qui a toutefois très mal commencé en 2000. Quelque part, quelqu'un est mort, mais son cœur a poursuivi sa mission puisque un de mes concitoyens, un ami qui habitait près de chez moi à l'époque, un père de 4 enfants, de 32 ans, qui était atteint d'une maladie grave au niveau de son cœur, qui était en attente de greffe. Et Sylvain Bédard a été greffé. À ce moment-là, ça fait maintenant 11 ans. Et il a eu un 5e enfant. Et il a même à maintes reprises fait des exploits sportifs. Il a fait l'ascension du Mont Blanc à Chamonix, monté à 6000 mètres quelque part en Bolivie. C'est un exemple de vivacité. Et un exemple à quel point c'est une démarche qui vaut tellement la peine. Après 11 ans, ce monsieur est toujours en santé et surtout d'un dynamisme et d'un exemple qu'il propage à tous autour de nous et ça nous donne envie d'aller faire un peu d'exercice.
The honourable member for Brayton.
Well, Madam Speaker, I thank my colleague for sharing that because that's a very beautiful story. And it's, you know, it makes us feel better when we hear those stories. And I guess what I would say in response is that for the person who made the donation of an organ, what caused them to do that? You know, was it because they had some individual knowledge maybe through another family member, or was it because there was a broader policy at work that connected with them? And I think that's what we want to get at tonight, because we want to hear of many, many more situations where somebody, you know, a family, when someone died or someone had made themselves a donor by signing up, and they could literally give the gift of life to someone else. So we want to hear more of these experiences and stories, and I think we will only do that by encouraging a much better process and system in place. And so that's really, I think, the purpose of tonight's debate, to help illuminate that, to draw attention to what's going on, of the plight and the living situation of people who are waiting on these donor lists to receive an organ. And so it's good to hear that story tonight.
Questions et commentaires? Questions and comments? Resuming debate.